EX30 is a different kind of Volvo, a small posh EV for a new era and a model that will bring enormous conquest sales for the brand. It's more affordable than you might be expecting and would perhaps make an ideal second car for upwardly mobile families embracing the electric revolution.
Just about every mainstream car manufacturer right now seems to be trying to reinvent itself as an all-electric brand. And in most cases, particularly with the premium makers, that seems to involve bringing us futuristic-looking EVs priced far out of the reach of most ordinary customers. Volvo wants to be different, and proof of that comes with this car, the EX30. This Chinese-owned Swedish brand can only survive by attracting a new breed of younger customers, and the EX30 is its most important car yet in reaching them. Now, the brand says that this model's job is to bring premium, full electric mobility to a much broader audience, and 3/4 of the people who choose it will never have considered this Gothenburg mark before. It's pitched and priced well below the company's existing EX40 and EC40 Volvo electric models, which compete with the base EVs from other premium brands like Audi, BMW and Mercedes, and sized, interestingly, somewhere between an EV Super Mini and an EV family hatch. Now, this means lower pricing than you might expect, and that's crucial if Volvo is going to get anywhere near its rather over-ambitious target of achieving 50% EV sales across its model mix by 2025. Assuming that, like us, you don't count the company's EC40 crossover coupe, which was derived from combustion-based XC40 underpinnings, this EX30 was, at its late 2023 launch, theoretically Volvo's first bespoke EV, although there's actually not much that's specifically Volvo in it. It's Chinese built, with all the fundamentals here borrowed from the Oriental Geely Group engineering, which has also brought global competitors like the Smart #1 and the Zeekr X. It's also the smallest Volvo since the DAF-derived 300 series model of the 70s, and in top twin motor form, it's the fastest car the company's ever made. A very significant contender then, and a tempting one for those who are looking to pay less for a small premium badged EV. So what's the truth behind all this car's bold claims? And could you really live with one? Well, for the answers to all those questions, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. This certainly feels like a futuristic little car, although not nearly as futuristic as it might have felt just a few years ago. Now, because there's no start button or engine note, you might not be entirely certain once you've climbed in here whether this EX30 is actually ready to go or not. There's no kind of handbrake control either, or any kind of instrument display ahead of this oddly squared off steering wheel to give you a ready signal. Volvo doesn't think that you need any of that in this new EV era, so just a click on the right-hand stalk here, the gear shifter is needed to activate forward motion. Rather rapid forward motion as it happens. The fastest twin motor performance version of this EX30 is the quickest accelerating Volvo ever built, and even the single motor extended range variant that we're trying today, the derivative that almost all customers will choose, takes just 5.3 seconds to dispatch the 0 to 62 sprint. That's because there's vastly more power here than you get with comparable models in the segment. To take just one example, the Kia Niro EV you could have spent much the same kind of money on offers just 201 horsepower and needs 3 seconds longer to get to 62. And that is pretty much par for the course, actually. Performance-wise, almost everything else you'd be offered for EX30 money is in a different league. which is an attribute that Volvo rather plays down here, concerned as the company is to emphasise this model's environmental attributes, and aware as it is that most customers will see EV driving range as a considerably greater priority than neck-snapping performance. It's a pity then that the EX30 doesn't fare anything like as well in that regard. This single motor extended range version is the most frugal EX30 you could choose, with the best possible EV range of 296 miles, which is some way short of the 319 miles you'll get in a 65.4 kilowatt hour Hyundai Kona electric, or the 347 mile range figure you get in a 77 kilowatt hour Volkswagen ID3 Pro S. If your budget will only stretch to the smaller battery 51 kilowatt hour single motor version of this car, then your range capability will be restricted to a rather feeble best of 209 miles. The extended range model figures are at least slightly better than those recorded by a rival smart #1, which, along with another Chinese-funded small EV, the Zeekr X, shares all its engineering and the most compact version of the Geely Group's SEA scalable experience architecture platform with this Volvo. If you happen to try an EX30 after test driving its smart #1 counterpart, you might guess at the family relationship that exists between the two, because they don't really feel that much different to drive. There's rather lifeless steering, even in its firmest setting actually, and there's exemplary refinement, although the EX30 has a slightly better judged standard of ride. It can, however, get slightly floaty over fast-paced undulations. Body roll, that's well resisted, but despite the rear-driven format, you don't get the kind of driver engagement that you find in this class from, say, a Cupra Born or an MG4 actually. Not even in the top twin-motor performance flagship variant that we mentioned earlier on. This adds an extra motor onto the front axle to create all-wheel drive and boost total output to a stonking 428 horsepower. That's enough to storm a twin-motor EX30 to 62 in just 3.6 seconds en route to the maximum 112 miles an hour that all the Volvos share. Off the top of our heads, we can't think of any five-door car for under £50,000 that's able to travel much faster than that. The twin motor spec is based around the same 69 kilowatt hour extended range battery, but with an extra 110 kilos of curb weight, which drops driving range down to a best of 280 miles. Normally, this is the point where we'd be talking about the need to engage a sport mode to get anywhere near the quoted performance figures, but Volvo doesn't seem to believe in proliferation of driving settings for its EVs. There aren't any provided drive modes, nor in fact are there any steering wheel paddle shifters, which you normally use to control brake regeneration in some other competitors. There's only a one-pedal drive setting activated via the central screen, and even that doesn't actually slow you down particularly fiercely. It is all you really need though, and it's useful for maintaining battery life around town, where this Volvo feels agile, nippy and really easy to manoeuvre, and that's helped by a rear-driven aided tight turning circle of just 10.7 metres. Get out on the open road and it's thankfully very easy to disable all the speed limit chimes and concentrate on the exemplary refinement here, the kind of journeying silence that we'd have thought the preserve of an expensive limo until the dawn of this electric era. That's no doubt aided by the lack of the kind of higher set crossover stance that you do get with many segment rivals, although evidence that Volvo considers this car to still include some crossover genes, that's provided by the rather unnecessary provision of hill descent control amongst the various driving aids. What you might not consider to be a driving aid though is the way that in the absence of any kind of binnacle ahead of the steering wheel, all the instruments have to be located in the top fifth of this Tesla-like central screen here. This is a monitor that you'll also have to use for things like adjusting mirrors and wiper sensitivity. This display should really be angled rather closer to the driver than it actually is, and as a result you sometimes find yourself looking at it for a fraction longer than you should be, and then you're admonished for that by beeping from the driver attention warning system. Even leaving that aside though, fishing about in menus for so many things simply isn't as intuitive as activating them physically, and that's slightly disappointing from a marque who's otherwise so apparently committed to ergonomic safety. At least the lane keeping and speed safety bings and bongs can be disabled in the most straightforward fashion that we've yet come across. That's via a quick control menu in the screen's lower car section. It's all part of a really very different interpretation of Volvo brand values. This is Volvo's smallest ever EV and perhaps also its most charismatic. Design chief T. John Mayer says the front end was inspired by Star Wars Stormtrooper helmet design. There is certainly a family resemblance to the brand's larger EX90 SUV with a closed-off grille and the marque's usual Thor's hammer headlights. From the side, it becomes evident that the big ideas here come in quite a little package. The 4,233mm length is significantly shorter than the key family hatch-shaped compact electric models this EX30 is primarily aimed against. Think Kia EV3 or Hyundai Kona Electric, but still significantly longer than a cheaper EV Super Mini like a Peugeot E208 or a Vauxhall Corsa Electric. Dark lower side sills and 165mm of ride height hint at crossoverness, but only rather half-heartedly because Volvo hasn't added in roof rails or cladding for the flared wheel arches. There are some nice design touches here though, like these frameless door mirrors, the uber-short overhangs and the upward glasshouse sweep into the branded C-pillar there. This concave indentation in the lower flank brings light and shadow to an interesting selection of colours, which include a moss yellow, apparently inspired by some lichen that grows on rocks on the west coast of Sweden. Virtually all the shades are complemented by this contrast-coloured onyx black roof and set off by aero wheels, which are between 18 and 20 inches in size. At the front, the low twin-creased bonnet flows into a simple, uncluttered, blanked-off nose section that firmly identifies this as an EV and helps with the relatively slippery 0.28 CD drag factor. That's helped by concealed shutter blades in the front spoiler, which automatically adjust from 0 to 90 degrees opening to optimise cooling and aerodynamics. Also aided by integrated air inlets at the outer ends of the bumper, which creates an air curtain over the front wheels. These arrow-shaped headlamps have an interesting design, which is made up of segmented LEDs and which can be adjusted in height to avoid dazzling other road users when the car's heavy laden or being used for towing. The rear reveals a fresh take on the brand's usual high-level taillight signature. It's been designed in two flush-fitting sections, one in either corner of the tailgate and the other on the outer edges of the narrow tailgate glass panel, which is set off by a subtle roof spoiler and a dinky little rear wiper. These black upper and lower hatch strips enclose the spaced-out Volvo lettering, and they emphasise the relatively generous 1,836mm of width. More significant, of course, is what you can't see, the EV-specific SEA, Scalable Experience Architecture platform, which this EX30 shares with its close Geely Group cousins, the Smart #1 and the Zeekr X. Time to take a look inside. The headlamp and taillight welcome sequence that greets you as you approach the car feels nice and premium. The light, buttonless, cheap-feeling square black plastic key fob doesn't. But all will be forgotten once you take a seat inside, because this clean sheet design really is very different, not only from any other Volvo, but also from just about any other car you may have come across. Now, your first impressions might not be based around what's on offer here, but what isn't? It's all very airy and minimalist, partly because many of the usual controls have been inhaled by this huge central Tesla-like portrait format Google-based touchscreen, partly because Volvo has maximised the space-saving possibilities brought about by the absence of a transmission tunnel, and partly because the speakers and the electric window switches have been stripped out from the doors. Lots else is unusual here. Cup holders slide in stages out of this bulky looking central armrest. In place of the centre stack, there's a standard charging mat which can take a couple of handsets, and a speaker soundbar runs across the full width of the upper part of this slim two-tier dashboard. The strangely shaped steering wheel is squared off top and bottom. The Star Wars theme returns with curious vertical vents that sit at either end of the dash and which also flank the central screen here. The area you think would house the glove box doesn't. It actually slides out from the central part of the dash. And with this top spec model, you get this vast panoramic roof, which is fashioned from UV protected glass, and it takes up virtually the whole of the roof space. The trimming is all very eco-centric and Scandinavian, some of which works and some of which doesn't. To suit the mood of the moment, there's no real leather, of course. Instead, Volvo has reclaimed old plastic bottles and denim fibres to create upholstery which can come either in this recycled polyester or, which we'd much prefer, in a rather nice knitted wool blend. The fake leather that can accompany some of the upholstery options isn't particularly pleasant, and this shiny blue mid-level fascia trimming was likened by one writer to the spray-on floor in a school toilet. We think that's a bit harsh. The 5-colour ambient lighting system illuminates these areas quite nicely, but we are in broad agreement with another reviewer who suggested that this grained black plastic lower dashboard surfacing, which extends into the doors, offers all the ambience of a hospital waiting room. We're going to have to brief you thoroughly on this 12.3-inch screen because unless you can get on with that, you won't like this car at all. Only the top fifth of it is occupied by the functions that you'd usually find in an instrument binnacle or on the kind of head-up display this car also declines to offer. And as we mentioned earlier on in our driving section, you'd be able to see them more easily if the screen was slightly more angled towards the driver. Still, there's everything that you really need here: gear selection, an odometer, battery percentage, remaining range, and speed sign recognition. The bulk of the screen real estate, though, is taken up by this central section, usually occupied by a Google Nav map, and expandable via this bottom right-hand corner home button. A touch on that removes the two lower customizable widget boxes, which here we've set to show radio and phone settings. A row of lower touch icons deals with things like the very intuitive Google Assistant voice recognition system, demisting, boot release, and weirdly, unlatching the glove box. That's another Tesla touch. Because there's no central stack for physical ventilation buttons, climate functions have to sit along the monitor's bottom frame, along with the car icon, which connects you to a quick control screen, and that offers an easy way to disable some of the more intrusive drive assist functions. Because this is a Google-based system, Volvo's had to add in Apple CarPlay smartphone mirroring separately, but it is of the wireless sort at least. As usual with this Android setup, there's connection to the Google Play Store. 4 years of included data access is built in, and of course, there'll be regular over-the-air upgrades that will include access to 5G mobile networks. If you like the modern feel that all this technology delivers, then you'll probably quickly adjust to the fact that there's no start button or electronic handbrake. And you may also like many of the cabin's little stylized touches, like the smart silver door handles, the frameless design used not only for the rear view mirrors, but more unusually for the door mirrors, and the rather avant-garde armrests, which float and, less impressively, slightly flex within the door cards. You might hope, though, that this big appendage between the seats would house the kind of vast covered storage box it does initially appear to conceal, but of course it can't, because the retracting cup holder panel, which extends from it with power window switches at its furthest end, has to slide back into something. So your main cabin stowage area is this lower central open one. unless the items you want to stow are small enough to slip into the twin-lidded storage area along its bottom, which has 2 USB-C ports within. You could also put things into the door bins. They're long and large because, as I mentioned earlier, they're not compromised by speakers. And you're probably going to have to do that because once you've actually figured out how to operate this central slide-out glove box, you'll find that very little will actually fit into it. Ticket clips are built into the vanity mirrors, and if you can reach back behind the lower storage area, you'll find a further space that incorporates a removable storage box. We mentioned this twin handset charging mat earlier. It's a nice touch, as is the toothed rubber mat that keeps the handsets in place and stops them annoyingly sliding around when you go around the corners. Your keys, though, will probably do that because there's no appropriate receptacle for them. What else? Well, build quality from the Zhangjiakou Chinese factory seems solid, and it's a pleasant surprise to find that the Harman Kardon soundbar we mentioned earlier comes as standard, complete with a 1040 watt amplifier, plus a woofer, a subwoofer, and Quantum Logic Surround 5.1 technology. Another nice touch lies with the ambient lighting system's 5 soothing settings: Northern Light, Archipelago, Forest Bath, Midsummer, and Nordic Twilight. Really lovely. And we like the way that the heating for the seats and the steering wheel is automatically activated at temperatures below 7 degrees C if you use the car's phone app to precondition the cabin climate before you get into the car. As usual in a Volvo, the seats are supportive, and like the steering wheel, they come heated as standard, although unfortunately they don't feature adjustable lumbar support unless you stretch to this pricier Ultra Spec level of trim, which also includes 12-way powered adjustment. The final nail in any aspirations this car might have had to crossover status lies with a low-set driving position, which is very conventionally small hatch-like. That doesn't particularly help actually with all-round vision. It's also slightly impeded by the chunky windscreen pillars and the slim rear screen, so you'll be needing the all-round parking sensors and the reversing camera. It's upgraded to a 360-degree setup, a bird's eye view on this top Ultra Spec model. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, you wouldn't usually expect a car of this size to offer very much room in the back, but the SEA bespoke EV platform might well help out in that regard. To some extent it does. In terms of leg and knee room, it's not generous, but it's certainly not Super Mini-like. And the flat floor means that uncomfortably cramming in a middle-seated occupant wouldn't be impossible on a shorter trip, which is struggle much more to do with a comparable combustion model of this size, although life in that regard would be much easier with a comparably priced rival Hyundai Kona Electric. A less welcome byproduct of the EV platform lies with the height of this floor. It forces passengers to sit with their knees higher than their hips. Still, there are compensations, like lots of storage space, decent door bins, and access to the centrally placed removable stowage box that we mentioned earlier on. Disappointingly, Volvo doesn't think you need seat back pockets here, but the centrally placed window switches are flanked by USB-C ports, and when you use those, there's a little cubby below to take your phone while it's charging. You don't get a central armrest here or reclining backrests, but there are small stowage trays on the outer edges of the seat bases, and there are beady overhead reading lights. We'll finish as usual with a look at boot space. There is a standard powered tailgate, which is good, but no buttons on the key fob to operate that with, which isn't. So unless you're using your Volvo phone app, or you've previously had the forethought to activate the boot release on the central screen before you got out of the car, then you're going to have to get your fingers grimy by pressing this central button for tailgate activation. The tailgate rises to reveal a compact 318 litre capacity. That's disappointing given that most of the same platform engineering in this car's smart #1 Geely Group cousin delivers up to 421 litres of room. Other direct rivals do far better too. You get about 460 litres in a Kia EV3 or a Hyundai Kona Electric. Still, that may not matter if your luggage needs aren't considerable and you don't mind the rather high lip over which you have to cart your stuff. It's a square, usable space with an adjustable height floor panel, although it doesn't centrally fold to reveal convenient shopping bag hooks like it does in the EX40. This floor panel sits above a narrow 61-litre lowered storage area. That's too small for any kind of spare wheel, but it is useful for charging leads, and that's important because the front space for them beneath the bonnet is tiny. Here's the thing we like most, this loading dimensions diagram on the inside of the tailgate here that helps you to work out what will fit before you go to the trouble of actually trying to lump it in. There are 4 silver tie downs, 2 bag hooks, a luggage light on the left, a 12-watt power socket, and also there's a warning triangle built into the underside of the parcel shelf. And Volvo provides recessed areas on either side so that bulky items like pushchairs or golf bags should fit in widthwise. Unfortunately, there's no ski hatch or convenient 40-20-40 seat back split, so if you have rear-seated passengers, long items like skis are going to have to go on the roof. There's 400 litres of carriage capacity if you load up to the headliner and include the space below the floor. With the backrest flattened, which creates a practically level floor, storage space rises to a modest 622 litres or 904 if you load up to the headliner. Now, we mentioned the underbonnet frunk. This is only 7 litres in size, although Volvo says with squashier items up to 19 litres in size would fit. A covering lid here helps to protect content from dust, dirt and moisture. Prices from launch and at the time of this test in summer 2024 started from just under £33,000, including 3 years of free servicing. But it's more likely that you'll be acquiring your EX30 with some kind of leasing or PCP finance package. Let's take a look at the EX30 lineup in detail. There's a choice of 3 trim levels: base, core, then plus and plusher ultra, which is what we have here. There are 2 battery sizes, 51 kilowatt hours and the larger extended range 69 kilowatt hour battery that we've been trying here. Most will ignore the smaller battery, which is only offered with cheaper core and plus trim and is really just there to give this Volvo an affordable looking entry-level price. Virtually the whole EX30 lineup from launch was primarily based around the larger extended range battery that we've been trying here, and that pushes the starting price up to around £37,000 and above, which is what you might have been expecting to pay in the first place for a premium badged small EV hatch of this sort. Once you've got your head around that kind of spend, you might be prepared to consider the option with the extended range battery of paying even more for the brand's twin motor performance drivetrain, and that adds a further £2,500 to the price. So how does this kind of pricing leave this Volvo placed in the market for small EV hatches? Well, pretty competitively. The base single motor model power output, 272 horsepower, is far above what you get from the fractionally larger small crossover EV electric models it's sized against. Cars like the Hyundai Kona Electric, the Renault Megane E-Tech, the Volkswagen ID.3, the Cupra Born, or EV versions of the Kia Niro or the Jeep Avenger. They're all pitched in the £35,000 to £38,000 bracket, as are this Volvo's almost identically engineered Geely Group cousins, the Smart Hashtag 1, the Smart Hashtag 3 and the Zeekr X. The latter is not yet on sale at the time of this test. For a Mini Countryman electric, you'd need about £42,000. Even premium brand small hatches like the BMW iX1, which starts from around £46,000, and the Mercedes EQA, which starts from around £50,000, don't give you anything like as much power as you get here, although they are slightly larger than an EX30. Volvo targets these cars more directly with its larger EX40 and EC40 EVs. If, having considered all that, you conclude it is an EX30 that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Volvo's been with the standard kit. So let's take a look at that right now. Base core trim gives you most of what you'll need, but most customers will want to upgrade themselves to mid-level plus trim. Now here, wheel sizes depend on the battery size you've chosen, 18 inches for the 51 kilowatt hour model and 19-inch rims for the 69 kilowatt hour extended range variants. All plus spec models get a dual tone roof, assuming you don't order your car in black, plus an automatic LED headlight system with active high beam, rain sensing wipers, all-round parking sensors, a reversing camera, power folding heated door mirrors, adaptive cruise control, a speed limiter, a one-pedal drive system and an anti-theft alarm. On the EV side, Volvo includes an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, so you can power up from a 3-phase supply, a 32 amp Type 2 cable and a Mode 3 charge cable, and a heat pump to maintain your driving range in cold weather by drawing heat from the ambient air to drive the climate system. In addition, you of course get an app, the Volvo Car Services app, via which you can control charging times, activate the climate system, request emergency help, remotely lock or unlock the car, and even keep a driving journal. Inside with plus spec, there's a 12.3-inch center console portrait touchscreen, heat for the front seats and the steering wheel, auto dimming mirror, a choice of 5 interior color themes, and a 1040 watt output Harman Kardon premium sound system using a dashboard soundbar with 7 speakers and offering quantum logic and direct unison tech. The front seats have fixed lumbar support, and the Google Automotive Services enabled central screen there has wireless Apple CarPlay, navigation with Google Maps, voice recognition with Google Assistant, various enabled entertainment apps, and unlimited mobile data for 4 years. With plus trim, there are 2 upholstery pack choices. Here we've got dark blue themed indigo with recycled polyester textiles and a contrasting Nordico material made from Scandinavian pine oil with recycled PET. But you might prefer the alternative green themed pine, which combines the Nordico with a 30% wool blend. There are various cabin trim decor options too. Flax, which is made from linseed plants, particle, which is fashioned from discarded PVC window frames and roller shutters, denim, which is made from 50% old recycled denim fibres, or simply air vent decor, which can be had in either blue or transparent, depending on the upholstery package that you've selected. So quite a lot's included across the range, all of which might make you wonder whether it's really worth finding the $3,500 extra that Volvo wants from you to upgrade from mid-range plus to the plusher ultra trim level that we're trying here. This has larger 20-inch wheels, a fixed panoramic glass roof, a dark tinted rear and side windows, a 360-degree camera with a virtual 3D view, and a Park Pilot Assist system which steers you into spaces. There's also a 22 kilowatt 3-phase onboard charger. Inside with ultra trim, there's power adjustment and memory settings for the front seats, and with an Ultra Model 2, there's a wider choice of upholstery packages. As well as indigo, you can have breeze, which is the full polyester option in light blue, or mist, and that's a grey, which is supposed to evoke silvery fog and which blends in the wool. Bear in mind that whatever trim level you select, you will almost certainly be paying more for your choice of paint colour. We have vapor grey here. As for options, well, virtually all of the extras available are practical ones, things like floor mats, a load compartment mat, mud flaps, and the roof crossbars, which would enable you to fit a roof box and carriers for bikes and skis and snowboards. You can also add in a tow bar. That'll also give you the option of adding in a cycle carrier on the back here. You might also want a load securing net, a charging cable bag, and a Thatcham approved vehicle tracking system. On to safety, which, as ever with Volvo, is a key focus. Despite not having an internal combustion engine to help absorb a frontal impact in a crash, this electric EX30 is claimed to be one of the safest small cars ever built, and that's thanks to what the brand calls safe space technology. Now, this is the umbrella name for all the car's standard safety features, which work via a wide array of radars, cameras and ultrasonic sensors. Now, the most recent part of this package, which Volvo has been working on, sees a three-way combination of camera, radar and ultrasonic at the rear for ultra-accurate detection of adults, children, animals and objects behind the car. Volvo now includes a door opening alert that's designed to prevent occupants opening their doors in the face of oncoming vehicles or cyclists. Also enhanced is the brand's driver alert system. Now, this monitors your eye and head movements, and that's to check for distraction. It's almost too good, actually. Look at the central screen for more than 5 seconds and the system is going to admonish you to the point where you might really be tempted to turn the drowsiness detection system off completely. There's an autonomous braking system, of course, forward collision warning. This can also detect cyclists and pedestrians. There is also an oncoming mitigation by braking setup. Now, this not only stops you from pulling out into the path of an oncoming vehicle, but it can also steer you away from an object like that and an impact like that. There's also a rear collision warning and mitigation system. Now, this warns you of impending rear end collisions, and if one's inevitable, will take steps to mitigate the severity of that impact. And an intersection auto brake feature, which stops you from pulling out in front of oncoming traffic at junctions. A lane keeping aid alerts you if you're drifting over the lane separating lines and subtly steers the car back to where it ought to be. There's also run-off road protection and run-off road mitigation too. These stop the car inadvertently swerving off the side of the road. Also included is a blind spot information system with steer assist, which warns you if you're just about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle, and it'll apply steering assistance to ease you back to safety. Another steer assist feature, pedestrian, cyclist and scooter steering avoidance, stops you from getting too close to people and cyclists on country roads. Rear cross traffic alert with auto brake will warn you of oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a space, and this is also able to automatically brake the car if necessary to avoid a collision. And low speed auto brake rear, now this will stop you from hitting people, animals or objects at low parking and manoeuvring speeds, a low wall for example, or perhaps an errant dog in the driveway. Driving aids include speed limit assist, which works with the standard road sign information system to keep the car within posted limits. There's usual speed limit warning chime, which thankfully isn't too difficult to turn off via the central touchscreen there. Pilot Assist is Volvo's semi-autonomous driving system. This can effectively drive the car for you in stop-start traffic or on highways at speeds of up to 81 miles an hour. It keeps the car centered in the lane, and it operates steering and throttle as long as you keep your hands on the steering wheel. This also includes actually lane change assist, which allows you to change lanes merely by activating the indicator. Distance to truck assist feature helps with safer overtaking of HGVs too. More conventionally, there is of course all the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control, plus Volvo's usual whips, front seat whiplash protection and SIPS, side impact protection systems. And of course you get a full complement of airbags, and this includes a full-length inflatable curtain and an inner driver's seat side airbag. As part of the features of the Volvo On-Call Connected Services platform, the emergency services will be advised of your exact location if those airbags are activated in an accident. ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a speed limiter, a road sign information display and a first aid kit also make the team sheet. Volvo thinks that going small with an EV is sustainably smart. A smaller car, the company says, often takes less resources and energy to build and use, and the most sustainable component will always be the one that wasn't produced. Now, you might very well think that to be a rather good argument for not buying a new car at all, but you can see what the company's getting at here. It's an argument that would carry a bit more ecological weight if this EX30 didn't tip the scales at nearly 1.8 tonnes. Some entry-level combustion-powered super minis are nearly half that weight. Of course, all this car's small EV rivals are also weighed down like a proverbial brick by their substantial drive batteries, but at least with some of those competitors, you can, in compensation, get an EV driving range figure that starts with a 3. As we told you in our driving section, that's well beyond the scope of an EX30. To repeat the mileage figures that we gave you earlier on, the base 51 kilowatt-hour single motor model manages a best of 209 miles, while this single motor extended range 69 kilowatt-hour variant improves that to a best of 296 miles. With a 69 kilowatt-hour twin motor version, it's up to 280 miles. To give you some class perspective, that's about what you get from a comparable Kia Niro EV or a Mini Countryman electric, but it is some way off the 319 mile reading of a 65.4 kilowatt-hour Hyundai Kona electric, the 347 mile figure that you get in a 77 kilowatt-hour Volkswagen ID.3 Pro S, or the 372 mile figure you get from an 81.4 kilowatt-hour Kia EV3 long range. At least the charging speed on offer is competitive. Well, it is with the 69 kilowatt-hour extended range battery pack anyway. That can charge it up to 153 kilowatts. The base 51 kilowatt-hour battery only charges it up to 134 kilowatts. Both models will deliver a 10 to 80% DC public rapid charge in about half an hour, 26 minutes for the bigger, faster replenishing pack. To give you some class perspective, it's about 15 minutes quicker than a rival Hyundai Kona electric. If you are able to engage in 3-phase charging, then you'll be very happy to learn that the 11 kilowatt onboard charger that some Stellantis Group EVs will charge you more for is standard here, and a 22 kilowatt onboard charger is included with the priciest Ultra trim. As for replenishing the battery from home, well, a full AC home charge of the 69 kilowatt-hour battery from a 7.4 kilowatt wall box using a 32 amp single phase supply needs 11 hours, or there's 8 hours using a 3-phase 16 amp supply instead. It'll be 9 hours on a single phase for the 51 kilowatt-hour battery, or 6 hours with 16 amp 3-phase. As usual, you can set charging times via a provided app or by using the charging screen in the car. This allows you to target your required battery level via daily drive, long trip, or custom settings. You can, of course, also use the app or the screen to monitor driver efficiency levels. A trip info screen gives you data based on current trip and since last reset. Above, a coloured consumption graph, which shows your consumption in kilowatt hours per 100 miles over the last 25 or 50 miles. Now, Volvo quotes a miles per kilowatt-hour consumption figure of up to 3.6 miles for this extended range model, although we haven't managed to get very near to that at all on this test. The official figure for the 51 kilowatt-hour and twin motor variants is up to 3.5 miles per kilowatt-hour. What else? Well, like all EVs, you'll be BIK tax rated at 2% until 2025, which is also when the free first-year VED road tax and free EV exemption from the London congestion charge and ULEZ zone policies will be reviewed. As usual with an EV, insurance groupings are a lot higher than with a comparably sized combustion model because brokers remain worried about EV accident write-off costs. The single motor 51 kilowatt-hour version starts at Group 35E. This single motor extended range variant is Group 37E, and the twin motor is Group 40E. Depreciation after 3 years and 36,000 miles is expected to be at around 52% for this extended range model. It'd be about 55% for the twin motor version. There's the usual unremarkable 3-year, 60,000 mile Volvo warranty. That is somewhat embarrassed by the 5-year cover that Hyundai offers, or the 7-year package of an equivalent Kia. The battery is separately covered by an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty. Service intervals are every 18,000 miles or 2 years, whichever comes around first. Like all EVs, of course, this is trumpeted as a zero emissions model, and of course, like all EVs, it isn't. The energy needed to create the electricity that drives this 1.8 ton Volvo has to come from somewhere. A well-to-wheels calculation sees an EX30 emitting CO2 at the rate of 30.9 grams per kilometre. But that doesn't mean it can't set its own standards for EV eco-friendliness. And we started this section talking about sustainability, so let's finish it on that subject too. This car is made at a carbon-neutral Zhangjiakou Chinese factory, and Volvo claims that all versions of it have been produced with a reduced CO2 footprint. The company says that this is below 30 tonnes over a 124,000 mile driving life cycle, and that covers both operation and production, which is about 25% lower than Volvo's EX40 and EC40 EVs. This has been achieved in part through a body that contains 25% recycled aluminium, along with 17% recycled steel and plastic. There's never been a Volvo quite like the EX30, and a lot of people are going to find it very desirable, despite the fact that in many ways it is a slightly confusing confection. Pitched above an EV Super Mini, but not as spacious or practical as an EV family hatch, with more performance than it needs and less EV range than it probably ought to have. Its maker has a target of eradicating road accidents, yet here they've launched a car with potentially arresting acceleration paired alongside a drive interface that some are going to find distracting. And the headlining entry-level price isn't at all indicative of the kind of money that virtually all EX30s will actually sell at. If you can get past all that and the fact that the design and execution here is far more Chinese geely than Gothenburg Volvo, you might also find some of the cabin design dedication to sustainability somewhat sanctimonious. Then again, you might not. At least it's different. Having said all of that, it's also true that there's a lot to like here. Now, we mentioned the eager performance. You'll also appreciate the premium feel, the high equipment levels, and the stylized little design touches. As a result, in many ways, if you can get over its quirks, you'll probably think that no other affordably priced small EV would feel as good as this one does to own. And you might well be right. And in summary, well, the Swedish marque's name, translated from Latin, means I roll. In the case of the EX30, you might be tempted to think it rocks too.